I'm Brad Kubota, 51 years old. I'm an advertising account executive. I've been in that all my life. I am Vice President of Sales for Rogers Media. I head up sales for Western Canada, so we do TV sales, radio sales, publishing and digital sales, all rolled into one. 3 girls, a beautiful wife, and live out in Anmore. My initial diagnosis. It was 2016, and I go for an annual medical checkup. My company is very good and treats me to kind of a full head-to-toe checkup. One of the checkups they do is PSA. In the fall of 2016, my PSA test came back really, really high. I was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic prostate cancer, and it hits you like a truck because the doctors are telling you, you have terminal cancer. And you don't doubt the test results, multiple test results, they're there for you to see. But it does take a good couple of weeks for you to kind of just go, like, really? This is happening to me? Initially, it's like, Brad, don't worry about it. I'm sure it's nothing. We'll do another test and we'll worry about that test result when we get the test result, but I'm sure it's nothing. And so you hear that all along the way. When you become stage 4, that tone changes. It goes from being hopeful to now comforting you through that terribly overused and misunderstood term, palliative care. All of a sudden, you're faced with, are my best years all of a sudden behind me? You feel like you are underwater and you just don't know how to move and which way to go. It is just an absolute assault on the senses, both physically and mentally. No symptoms at all. And thankfully caught through that screening, initially through that screening process, the PSA test. Obviously you have to move forward and take the cancer agency at their word. And quickly they come at you with an onslaught of what your options are. And those options, again, are all under the palliative kind of approach, are chemotherapy, perhaps radiation. And in my case, for prostate cancer, it's about androgen deprivation, it's ADT. They warn you about all the terrible things that are going to happen to you from the chemo, from the ADT, from the chemical castration, and should you consider radiation, all the terrible long-term effects that can happen to you from radiation as well. You get very upset that you're not getting any real support for thinking outside of their protocol, that you do start to believe that they're missing something. And you do start to believe that unless you advocate for yourself outside of that protocol, that you won't have a plan. And if you don't have a plan, then you don't have hope. The diagnosis does absolutely fall as it stages. It is a very much hurry up and wait. And then once they understand what it is, which kind of comes clear, crystal clear with the final few scans, CT scans, bone scans. Then all of a sudden, as you say, it's like, whoomp, okay, you have to make some quick decisions. You can do this, but if that happens, you do that. We don't want to operate anymore. We don't operate on stage 4 people. Time is of the essence. And so you do need to figure out how to self-advocate while you're still understanding all these medical terms that come slamming at you, all still while battling in your head and coming to grips with it. You have this beast that kind of hangs over you like a heavy blanket. The terminal, the palliative thing is just with you as a backdrop all day in everything you do. How do you find the help? How do you find who to turn to? Well, initially, I think, like a lot of people, you turn to what you know and have access to within the public healthcare system. And within that, there are a few people you can talk to. So you've got your family doctor, you're given a head oncologist, you have a urologist who specializes in oncology. You're also given access to a radiation doctor. So within the public healthcare system, you do get a number of different doctors, all of whom have a different opinion. Do I want to have chemo? If I only have 2 to 5 years, do I want to actually suffer through chemo? Do I want to suffer through some of the long-term side effects of radiation if I only have 2 to 5 years? On and it goes, right? Hormone deprivation. All of these things come with these descriptors too of what I now in hindsight think are worst case scenarios, the nausea, the vomiting, the being susceptible to viruses. You will become sexually impotent. You will gain weight. And they say these with such certainty, and they tell you this with such great authority that when you initially hear it, you have to take them at their word. Trying to self-advocate within this system that delivers to you so much worst case scenario negativity around the treatments, and no options outside of that, I found to be extremely overwhelming. You self-advocate within the system of protocols of the public healthcare system, and so you are forced to quickly make decisions. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to go through hormone deprivation, I'm going to go through chemotherapy. So I was never happy enough with their explanation that that was it. I found it hard to believe that that was only my options, that there must be something else. And so part of what you do when you self-advocate is you do look for, and I'll use the term alternative initially because I didn't understand what alternative medicine or integrative medicine was. And my initial impression was alternative medicine was an alternative and that you wouldn't have both at the same time. I was very lucky that a friend of mine said, well, then you've got to talk to Dr. Sharon Gurm. You've got to go see Dr. Sharon Gurm. Because what you want to do is make the treatments that you are receiving more effective. And what you want to do is make your quality of life through those treatments better than it would be. And if both those things could happen, would you be interested? It's like, okay, who wouldn't be? Totally into that. But what I loved about Port Moody Health was that it was proof-based. It was derived from studies. It was based on science. It was integrative care, and it was designed to make the chemo more effective, and it was designed to make the hormone deprivation more effective. It was the first time that anybody had said, hold on, first of all, you don't have to buy this 2 to 5 year terminal thing. The stats are for dead guys. Here are things that you can do. No guarantees, but here are things that you can do that based on our studies show will make the treatments a lot more effective, will make your quality of life a lot better. And we think that there is a plan for you to get at this thing and beat it back into the cage. And for me, that moment was, okay, wait a second. So there is a proper plan that isn't just wrapped around palliative. And like I've said before, where there's a plan, then there's hope. This was really the first time I had something to be positive about. This was the first time I felt like I could actually do something for myself that could give me a real running chance at beating this thing, if not in the long term, at beating it short term. My treatment at the clinic during the chemo consisted of, in a sense, it was the hyperthermia, and it was the infusions. It was hyperthermia to the tumors, and at the time I had 4 different tumors, the primary tumors and the 3 tumors that had metastasized. That was the treatment for the duration of my chemotherapy, which was 18 weeks. The side effects they warn you about, and I'm a runner, and I love to go to the gym, and I'm fairly active, and so they said, well, you won't be going to the gym and running during chemotherapy. Nobody does that. I kept waiting for those side effects to happen, and so being asymptomatic and being a runner, I was still running. I was still running 2 or 3 times a week. I was still running on the weekends. And you get the first treatment. Then the first treatment is never that serious anyway because it's only the first treatment, and I'm undergoing the infusions and the treatment at Port Moody Health. So the second treatment comes along, and I'm still running. I'm feeling it a little bit. By the 4th treatment, I'm starting to realize that I don't think any of these side effects are going to hit me. There was no nausea. I wasn't getting sick. I didn't have to nap at any point during the day. And while I was only running maybe 3/4 of the distance that I used to run, which is a pretty long distance, I was still running, and I was still going to the gym. And although I lost my hair, and I had a bit of water retention, that was it. That was the extent of the side effects. I felt amazing. I felt so good that I felt bad because you have an onslaught of people coming at you. How are you feeling? And we're thinking about you and worried about you. And I have seen other people go through chemotherapy and have a rough time. We've all heard the tough stories that come out of the treatments, and I didn't have it. I wasn't feeling that. And so lucky, yes. Healthy, yes. Treatments, how could those treatments not be a major part of that success? How could it be? So about a year ago, February of 2017, stage 4, terminal cancer, dun dun dun. Still on hormone treatments. Here we are a year later. I'm still on the hormone treatments. The chemo wrapped up at the end of last summer, early September. And a year later, the bone scans show clinical remission. The cancer has subsided out of my 3 bone mets. They don't normally remove the prostate in stage 4 guys. 2 weeks ago, I had my prostate removed because they were so intrigued by the tests. And because even now there is new belief and thinking that you do need to be more aggressive in treating stage 4 cancer than simply palliative. And that means in some cases, and I was very early stage 4, that you go in and you take the primary tumor out. So here I am a year later. I am still asymptomatic. I've discovered a love for shorter hair than I had before. I did discover how many women like bald guys, which was a total surprise. My advice to anybody going into this is be skeptical with authority. And it's so counter to how people become when they have that diagnosis within the healthcare system, because I think for the most people become prone, and you more or less prostrate yourself to the public healthcare system to save me. I don't think most people are going to question it or stand up and say, wait a second, I don't buy that. I don't buy into that as a complete plan. I certainly don't buy into you telling me that I'm palliative and that there is no, if not long-term cure, I get that there's no short-term cure. So I think my advice is, how do you disseminate all that information? Maybe you don't, other than to go into it with a strong sense of self, know that you can find a plan, and be a healthy skeptic with everything. I now feel like I've entered into kind of phase 2 of the fight. And so with all of the success that I've had with the integrative care, I feel like this cancer has been battled back into the cage. And while clinical remission is not a cure, I feel all of a sudden that this is a way better prognosis than they were giving to me a year ago at this time. And I now feel like the focus can be on maintenance and making sure that it stays down. And while I do understand that it could come back and bite me in the ass at some point, I do feel through Port Moody Health that if that happens, there are other alternatives. So there's lots of things that you can do now to keep this at bay for as long as possible. And so you feel empowered by that, and you feel like you have control. And that allows me to keep a positive headspace about something that has gone better than I had expected, better than I had hoped. It ended up being a good year. It ended up being a very positive year in my life. There's a quote from a philosopher that says, his greatest fear is not being able to live up to his greatest challenge. And it was nice to be able to manage one of the greatest challenges I've ever had thrown at me, and to manage it to that level of success feels very good. And I have to credit Port Moody Health for giving me kind of the groundwork and the floor plan to being able to tackle it that way. And so I feel good.